Those passwords you spend all your time trying to remember and especially not forget, well, they could be dead by next year. Welcome to Digits. I'm Simon Constable. Priya Anand of Marketwatch is here to explain this. Dead.
Yeah, so passwords are really pesky. Everyone has to remember so many of them. Each website has different restrictions of, 6 characters, 8 characters, add in uppercase, lowercase, letters, numbers. But there's a group called the FIDO Alliance, and they're working on creating a standard for password replacements. So whether it ends up being, fingerprint scans or iris scans or multiple different options like that, or hold up your smartphone to your computer and swipe a QR code. They're vetting all these different options, and they'll have new standards out for websites and companies to use by the end of this year, and they're working with groups like Google and Bank of America.
I mean, that's a huge change, because for anyone in the workforce who's been there using a computer, there have been passwords for the last, at least 2, maybe 3 decades, depending on what.
Since the 1960s, yeah.
1960s, if you had a computer. A lot of people didn't have computers up until about 20, 30 years ago. Is that going to be a huge cultural shift for people to get used to, or are they going to be happy with it, or are they just going to say, oh no, I just don't want to?
Yeah, I think some people will probably be very happy to not have to deal with passwords, because studies have found that about 40% of Americans would rather scrub toilets than go through and replace all their passwords.
I guess it depends on the toilet. It depends on the toilet, really, doesn't it?
How many passwords you've got.
So a lot of people tend to have on their desk somewhere, maybe on the back of the keyboard, like a list of the passwords for their stuff, and that's just a normal thing.
A bad idea, right? It's a horrible idea, and the more passwords people have to remember these days, the more apt you are to create a really weak password or reuse the same password on multiple websites, which is horrible for security, because then when one password gets stolen, people try to use those on different systems.
Will this actually make things more secure?
The hope is that it will, right? Because when someone wants to steal a bunch of passwords, they can hack into a web server and get thousands of passwords at one time if you hack into the right servers, right? If it's a big company, and with a fingerprint,
or tens of millions if you happen to be a Russian gang lately,
right? Or more than a billion.
Yeah, that's insane. I remember watching a sort of sci-fi fantasies where people were using fingerprints and stuff, and people were going around with the sticky tape, lifting them off and then putting them on. So maybe that is just ridiculous of me to think that. How is that any more secure?
It's actually not,
because my fingerprints are all over my desk.
Right, and everyone has that fear that, if we use fingerprints, you can't change your fingerprint. You can change a password unless, burn it off or something. But the difference is, with fingerprints, you have to steal them in a more individual fashion. If you're using a heartbeat, for example, which some people are creating ways to, track your heartbeat and have your heartbeat match up with your computer system so they know that it's actually you. You can't really track those things as well as you can get a password.
Well, it depends who's approaching. My heartbeat is related to who's approaching the desk, right? Because it could go a bit fast. But tell us about an app called Usher.
Right, there's an app called Usher that lets you either scan your eye, so not necessarily your iris, but the patterns on your eye, the veins on your eye, or your fingerprints, or they have a couple other ways too where they see, what time of day it is and who's logging in and how they're using it. And basically then it generates a QR code that you hold up to your computer, and the company that built that app, MicroStrategy, they've got about 3,000 employees, and all their employees are already using it. They have defense contractors as their customers. Georgetown University is actually starting to use this app also to let students log into their systems.
Now, I have seen some of our colleagues here, and the look of their eye depends on how late a night they had. If it's been very late and very fun, it tends to be a bit bloodshot. Is that going to really ruin everything for this Usher app?
I imagine they would have come up with ways to get around that. It's like when you put lotion on your hands, right? Your fingerprint is less readable, but depending on how the device is designed, there are probably ways where they can get past those
Let's hope they
factors.
can. Priya and Anand, we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Simon Constable, that's it.